Hi, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of An Unexpected Podcast. My name is Mick. With me today, I have Matt from Boston, Robert Cron from DC, and Rainier joining us from Korea. I'm here in sunny London, as always. Today, we're going to be discussing an army list from one of our reviewers and slash listeners, and then we're going to be going over Heroes of Rohan. Now, Rohan is a faction that has so many heroes and warriors and legendary legions and everything in it that it's probably like the biggest behemoth of the entire book. And so it's possible this will be split over at least two, possibly more episodes. So we'll go moving to the armor list first. So I'm gonna.
But before we do that, Nick, we should welcome you back from your overseas tour.
I'm back from my overseas tour. I've been away for 5 weeks. So
he has in an undisclosed location in the Middle East.
Indeed.
I'm not actually kidding about that. He is in an undisclosed location in the Middle East because we at the Unexpected Podcast are all about keeping the world safe for democracy, but we can't always talk about it.
Well, it was an unexpected location at least. Anyway, so moving on to the army list. I'm going to let Rainier read it because he has it on screen.
Right, so here we have an army list from our Facebook page. This viewer is from Germany. He says, "Hi, I'd like to submit a 500-point Gondor list." He tells us that he's been enjoying getting back into the game, and he likes watching the podcast while he paints. So first off, his first warband has Faramir, horse, bow, lance. Accompanying that is 10 warriors in Minas Tirith. 10 of them have shield, or all of them have shield. 7 have spear, 1 has banner. Then he has 5 rangers with spear. Second warband is going to be Angbor the Fearless, and he's leading 10 clansmen. Angbor is also going to be the leader, which is an interesting take. And then a third warband is going to be Captain of Minas Tirith on horse with shield, and 2 Knights of Minas Tirith with shield and lance. So it is a 500-point list. However, he is at 495. He's asking if we would suggest an upgrade to some Rangers to Citadel Guards with longbow, 1 more Knight to get to that 500 point. And he also has questions on advice whether or not he should bring Elisor, Boromir, or Gandalf at a 700, 800 point list. So yeah, so that's the list. I think the main, debate or question is clansmen or no clansmen. We're all going to discuss, but I won't take it all. The first thing I want to discuss, I guess, would be Angbor or Faramir. I personally don't think I'd make Angbor the leader just because he's pretty squishy. Typically, I actually don't bring Angbor because he dies really easily. It's a really cool theme, and it makes your clansmen, it makes them fearless, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes them fearless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as is with the army bonus, you're already getting, I think, Courage 5 clansmen, which is basically elves. They're going to be almost fearless. So I like the idea more of bringing, not Fatty Bismarck. Gosh, I'm like,
Forlong the Fat.
What's his name? Forlong the Fat. Yeah. I like the idea of Forlong the Fat. You can bring him. He has a lance and a spear, and you can put him on a horse and give him more killing power with Faramir. You could also.
What Rainier had meant to say.
Forlong the Fat, you can put him on a horse, and he is strength 5, and he's very strong.
But he is more expensive, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's the downside of Forlong the Fat, particularly on a horse.
Yeah, that's 25 points difference.
Yeah, which means something has to go away. Okay, so Rainier's back. We were just in your absence debating the Angbor, the Fearless versus Forlong the Fat question, which is something I was thinking about too. But why don't you finish your thoughts, Rainier, and then we can.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I don't know actually at 500 points because you guys are right. It's going to take down the numbers quite a lot. And I just like the idea of him with the lance for the killing power, fight 5, strength 5. And I just like that. Him with Faramir are going to do like a lot of killing combos, but you're right. And then you have defense 4 clansmen who might die and your numbers are down. Let me just get my internet back up.
So, yeah, I mean, I was wondering about that too. I think at the end of the day, I would switch out Arangor for Forlong the Fat. I mean, maybe you don't spend the 10 points to put Forlong on a horse, particularly if you haven't like gone through the trouble of converting Forlong on a horse. So that makes him a bit cheaper. That means it's 15 points more expensive. You got 5 in the bank, so you just got to find 10 points somewhere. And I think this has enough figures that you could find them.
Another option there is since you're getting, even if you put him on a horse, since you're getting another, mounted lance hero, you could downgrade the captain of Minas Tirith down to like, a Damrod or one of the cheaper heroes and use those excess points to upgrade Angbor to Forlong on a horse. And you're still going to get the 2 hitters. And I also, just right off the bat, since you have 5 points hanging anyway on the list, I would definitely drop the bow on Faramir for a shield and use those 5 points to give him heavy armor and then make him the leader, because you're going to have a D7, much more survivable leader at that point. And, if he's on a horse with a lance running around fighting, that bow is pretty useless anyway. So and then if you do that plus downgrade the captain to a cheaper hero to upgrade Angbor to Forlong, you have 2 pretty decent mounted heroes, with lances running around at 500 points, not to mention Courage 6 clansmen because of that warhorn, right?
What's the point difference between Faramir and Huron?
It's actually pretty close. I think they're about equivalent.
I thought Huron was a little cheaper.
He is a little cheaper. Yeah, Huron.
It depends on what you put on Faramir.
90
but yeah,
mounted. Whilst Faramir with all this gear is like 105.
Yeah, I mean that's another option is downgrade Faramir to Huron, and upgrade Angbor to Forlong. I mean you lose the Fearless, but you get the Warhorn, which is going to make your clansmen, Courage 6, so they're basically almost fearless at that point.
So you're gonna save 10 points in that because Faramir is 100 if you give him horse, lance, heavy armor, shield, right?
Yeah.
80, 90. I guess 105. So you get 15 points.
I mean, the downside of that is, the reason I like Faramir, if Faramir is going to be the leader over Huron, is because he's got the extra will, and he's got, I think, the extra fate too, if I remember it. So he is tougher than.
So Faramir definitely has extra fate on him and extra will for sure.
Yeah.
So
it's, you got what, 29 figures in here? I think you could probably do with a few, maybe a couple less clansmen, or you could get rid of like 1 knight and probably get everything you need out of this. But I definitely agree. Drop the bow on Faramir, take the shield and the heavy armor. I would also give a lance to the captain. And so I think you're right. I think if you have access to a mounted Forlong figure, then maybe we just strip that stuff from the captain, just use him as like a march battery and make Forlong your second killer. But assuming you don't have access to the mounted Forlong because they're not that common, then maybe what you do is you make it a foot Forlong, and you give the captain the lance to give him some more punch. You upgrade Faramir to have the shield and the armor, make him the leader, and you'll probably have to make something go away from that list. But you could probably sacrifice, a clansman or 2 and not really impact the killing power of this list to make it work.
Well, another option there is if you could also just take the opposite approach of keep Faramir, upgrade the Minas Tirith captain to Huron, And then you could either keep Angbor or have like foot 4 long, but then you could also have Faramir Hurin as your 2 hitters.
That gets
And
expensive though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
So I think
have
it's
another idea.
65 for that captain with horse and shield. Is that right?
I think that's
So it's
right.
like 25
Yes.
points that you would need to find. But
Yeah, and plus we're also talking about upgrading Faramir.
right.
And
But that's actually
that.
but that's a net 0 because you're just getting, I guess you're just taking the 5 points hanging to upgrade Faramir, right?
No,
if you drop the bow for the shield.
Drop the bow for the yeah, you're right. Take the 5 points hanging. Yeah, you're right.
Question. So I have a different idea. Like if we're talking about upgrading or degrading Faramir, what if we were
let's degrade Faramir?
How very Denethor of you, Mick.
Change things around and actually take Imrahil instead of Faramir and Angmor. Then we can also take Hurin, since we all like Hurin anyway. And I can say that we can bring something like 15 either axemen or men-at-arms, 11 warriors of Minas Tirith and 2 knights, giving us also a pretty good alliance between the 2 factions. And that gives us 30 models as well.
Hang on a second. How do we go up to Imrahil? Let me just see what the points difference is. You're talking about upgrading Faramir to Imrahil?
Yeah.
So it's Angbor plus Faramir equals Imrahil is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So we're getting rid of both Angbor and Faramir.
Yeah,
you're basically going down to 2 heroes at that point.
Imrahil, yeah. Yeah, you could do that. I mean, that is pretty major surgery on this list.
I mean, yeah.
I think at that point, you're changing every hero in the list as well as the warrior composition.
Yeah, not to say that's a bad idea. I mean,
not to say it's a bad idea. It's just kind of not this listing.
I mean, well, you're not really changing necessarily warrior composition. You still are able to keep either clansmen or axemen or men-at-arms. They're pretty much the same point. So like it's really up to you which ones you keep.
You know, I wonder if you do that though, whether the folks you want in this list are really the clansmen, or at that point, what you want are a bunch of warriors of Minas Tirith with shield to stand in front, and then a bunch of pikemen.
Well, yeah, because then also the other thing is, do you actually want defense 6 in the front or defense 5 or even 4 at the front? Because like to me, it seems that if you're using warriors of Minas Tirith to put them behind clansmen, then really your front rank gets shot to death by bows, and then you end up just having a handful of clansmen and a bunch of warriors of Minas Tirith.
Yeah,
so
although I mean, not everything.
To just swap it around.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the way he's got this list organized, not everything works out that way, because it looks like he's going to have his warriors of Minas Tirith shield wall. He's going to have some warriors of Minas Tirith that are going to be behind clansmen. He's going to have some warriors of Minas Tirith that are going to be in front of Rangers. But I do hear you about the the clansmen in the front rank. Although, I mean, I have to say, I played something like this, and what I tend to do with the clansmen, although I tend to have fewer clansmen, and I have some pikemen in this list too, is you run, instead of a conventional shield wall, what you end up doing is you run this kind of quasi shield wall that has a 1-figure wide gap between the files, and then the clansmen kind of hang out in the back. And then when you engage, when you have the guy that causes terror that you really need a clansman to charge, the clansman kind of runs forward between the files and charges that guy, and then either the spears or the pikes shift over to get behind that clansman. I'm not sure he's really configured to do that, because I think he's got kind of too many clansmen and not enough other stuff. But that's just something to think about.
I think pretty much regardless what units you take, I just think if you were to go into Imrahil's range, instead of going with Faramir and Angbor, then it just makes the entire army much better, in the sense that you also get the army bonus which allows you to essentially have banner reroll for your clansmen or whoever else is fighting. So it just improves the fighting capability of the entire army. And Angmor himself, like, he doesn't really do very much. So you're either way, you're relying on Faramir as your primary component. So then you might as well rely on Imrahil because he's way better.
I mean, you go ahead.
Well, he asks about 700, 800 points, Elisir, Boromir, Gandalf. What do you say, like, instead of the captain, just do Imrahil? And Imrahil and Faramir might be like a juicy combo.
That could work, yeah.
I also think that Boromir with banner at higher points in this list starts to get interesting, because then you have fight 5 clansmen, right, that have supports and banners and all sorts of things.
Or fight 6 men at arms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fight 6 men at arms if you
have both Imrahil and Boromir nearby.
Yeah, right. I'm wondering. I mean, you were talking, Mick, about getting rid of Faramir and Angmor, replacing him with Imrahil, and then upgrading the captain to Huron. I mean, the other thing I think you probably have the points to do is get rid of the captain and Angmor, keep Faramir, and then you've got Imrahil and Faramir as your
yes, yeah, you could do that too. Yeah,
you probably have to sacrifice like one guy. I mean, whether that's as point efficient as doing Huron, but at least that keeps something that's in the army now, right?
Yeah. Actually, can I just check? So Huron's special rule, I don't have the book on me, but does that only apply to Minas Tirith or to any Gondor models?
Gondor models. So it does apply if you have a fiefdoms general. It's just Gondor keyword.
Yeah, so he could work quite well with Imrahil in that you can just send Imrahil to his death, and then you still have Huron.
Right, and Huron's like, I'm still here.
Yeah, it's definitely a really neat trick to be like, this important leader that also needs to be out there mixing it up, can actually mix it up without, the fear of crippling myself. So yeah, it's just if your leader is a Gondor hero. So
yeah, so I think on that basis, I would pick Huron over Faramir.
Yeah, I think you're right. But the only reason I'm kind of hesitating to endorse that is because that ditches every hero that he took on the list. But if you don't want to do that, I think you can probably take Faramir over Faramir over here if you want to keep Faramir on the list. But oh, by the way, if you're going that way of adding in Imrahil to this, then I think you're right. If you go up to 700 or 800 points, then the guy you put in is Boromir. So you
definitely, yeah,
fight 6 guys. With the overlapping buffs.
Yeah, and then at some point you probably try to also add a Galadriel, Lady of Light, if that's even possible.
Or a Gandalf the White.
God, I just hate playing with Boromir, though. It's such a chore.
Yeah.
Just kidding. He's my favorite character.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to Rohan in that case.
All right, guys, I'm going to drop off just for
thank you to Julius from Germany for your list.
Yeah.
Back in a second.
Yeah, so Rohan triggers Matt, so that's why he's got to go take a little break.
Yeah.
Something about horses.
Also,
all right, who wants to go over
something about 100% ball limit?
Yeah.
All right, so
if you're allergic to horses or bows, this is not the list for you.
Precisely. Horses stink.
They do stink.
Oh, yeah.
I failed horseback riding as the only class I ever failed in college because I got there and found out I was allergic to horses, but then forgot to drop the class.
You had horseback riding as your
it was one of my
class.
Electives. It was an elective that I could take, and I was like, that sounds fun. And there was a stable on the school. Unfortunately, got there, blew up like a balloon, and then, like I said, forgot to drop the class until I realized, I failed.
What's an elective for the foreigners amongst us?
It's a class that you can take anything you want as just like a fun class,
Right.
that counts as credit towards your overall degree, but doesn't usually fall into, whatever specific area of study you're doing.
Oh, so you could take a class in wargaming.
If they offered one,
If
theoretically.
they offer it, yeah.
Right.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about how I failed horseback riding in college because I was allergic to horses, but forgot to drop the class. Yeah.
I suppose that's better than failing it because you kept falling off the horse.
Uh-huh. And that all started because Mick said horses stink, and I agreed.
Cool. All right.
Stink on ice. All right.
With that in mind, we are moving on to Rohan. So, as we said before, it's a gigantic list. So we're not gonna be able to finish it all in one episode. So here we go. So Rohan has an army bonus. Well, it has additional rules and army bonus. The additional rule for it is that riders of Rohan within this army list do not count towards your force's bow limit. So there is quite a common misconception out there. People thinking, oh, well, can I take some bows additionally to my riders of Rohan, and do the riders of Rohan then increase my numbers, and then I can take 1/3 of the remaining forces and still have them with bows, etc. So no, basically the way this rule works is you take your riders of Rohan, and even if you have other models in your army, you basically take the riders and you remove them from the army. The actual bow limit of 1/3 is for all the other models. Riders of Rohan, they don't exist. So the other rule, the army bonus is Ride for Ruin and the World's Ending. So the friendly Rohan cavalry models gain +1 strength on a turn in which they charge, which in many cases, especially against defense 4 and defense 6 and defense 8, that's equivalent to getting a lance bonus, which is actually really, really cool. So obviously, because of that, it's very rare that you wouldn't want to keep the bonus, because it's extremely powerful. It's probably one of the best bonuses in the entire game. Yeah. So moving on to heroes. Who wants to do Theoden?
Who doesn't want to do Theoden?
All right.
Well, Mick,
let's.
Why don't we start with you?
Okay.
You've been on a while.
Yeah.
Let's hear your voice about the Horse Lords.
Sure. All right. So here is Theoden, King of Rohan. He is a hero of legend. He comes in at 75 points. He has 5 value 5, strength 4, defense 5, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, and courage 5, with 3 might, 3 wounds, 3 will, and 1 fate point. He is dressed in an armor, and he has Erkenbrand, his special sword, which allows him to make a feint special strike even if his 5 value is lower than his opponent's. His heroic actions include Heroic March, Strike, and Challenge. So Heroic March and Strike are obviously both very good. Challenge, especially on a hero of legend, is pretty useless. And then his war gear options are getting an armored horse, getting normal horse, getting heavy armor, and getting a shield. So he can go up to defense 7 if he has heavy armor and shield, and obviously you have a choice between normal and armored horse, and you will almost always take the armored horse because the latest Theoden model, which is really, really nice, comes with an armored horse. So his special rules, Expert Rider, that's basically a rule that pretty much every Mountain Rohan model gets, and Horse Lord, which is the one which allows you to use your fate points to protect your horses from dying. Then the other rule, the will of man is easily corrupted. If he is within 6 inches of Grim and Wormtongue, then Theoden will be reduced to fight value 3 and only 1 attack. He also may not declare heroic actions and may not use will points. And then fourth and Fear No Darkness. His Stand Fast is increased to 12 inches rather than 6. So Theoden essentially is a very good character, which, even though it isn't stated in his profile, he affects warriors of Rohan, riders of Rohan in a very specific way. in that I'll just mention from the Rider of Rohan profile, if riders or if Rohan Royal Guard are within 12 inches of Theoden, then they receive +1 bonus to their fight value when in the turn when they charge. So that's basically the unwritten special rule that Theoden has on Riders of Rohan and the Royal Guard. So with that in mind, it means that he is basically a hero that you will always want to take unless you're taking a Legendary Legion, because you will generally always want to take a bunch of Rohan Riders or Royal Guard. And so you would always want to get that. So with that in mind, he's basically the automatic inclusion. He brings you 18 models. He has 3 might points. He has strike and march, which are the 2 best heroic actions you need. His downside is obviously that he is a bit squishy with just 2 wounds and 1 fate. So as your general, most of the time, you're gonna have to take good care of him. But for the price that you pay and everything that you get, he's basically there to always be taken, unless you have a reason not to.
Yeah, it's so hard not to take him. I mean,
Yeah.
when I build the Rohan list, I'm like, I want to do something different, and then you just see the bonuses he gives. But Mick's right about him being squishy. That's why I would always give him heavy armor and shield, because that's gonna keep him alive. Yeah, and he's also not that expensive points wise when you compare him to other heroes of legend. I think we discussed it before. He's one of the cheapest heroes of legend, unkitted, but of course you're going to kit him up. But yeah, the only downside again is he's going to be a little squishy, and he is the only hero of legend too. So you have to make him your leader. So heavy armor, shield, and yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say he's an auto include, but he's pretty close to being that.
I mean, he is, I believe, one of the, I think, only 5 heroes in the game who are heroes of legend and cost 100 or less.
Mm.
So
just out of curiosity, why is he not an auto include?
Right.
That's true. I've toyed with lists. We'll go through them with like Theodred, Eomer, and another 5/5 hero from the Rohan list. That's my only way that I wouldn't include him, is to do something around Theodred and Eomer. But
wouldn't you rather? Well, I mean, we're not discussing the legendary legions today, but if you're doing Eomer or you're doing Theodred, I mean, they come with their own legendary legions. Why wouldn't you use those?
Allies, so someone like Theodred, Eomer, Boromir, someone like Theodred, Eomer, yeah, something like that. I don't know. Maybe he is an auto include.
That unless you're playing one of the legions that doesn't include him, or doing a really weird alliance, he's an auto include. So like I've toyed with, when you just want some like Rohan Royal Guard and a cheap hero to read them, allying like a Gamling with a couple Royal Guard into a Gondor list, for example, because he's just cheap points wise, especially without the banner. But if I'm playing Rohan and I'm not playing one of the legions, or I don't want like some crazy ally that's going to break my army bonus anyway, he's probably an auto include for me.
Yeah, same.
Even with allying in too, he's a really good ally with Fiefdin's really good ally with Gondor.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like really, really good, because you do, like you said, you'll get the army bonus, then all of a sudden you have him with fight 5 Royal Guard, so he's pretty good.
Yeah, that special rule that is, his rule, even though it's not in his profile, the Arise Riders of Theoden, is just so good.
Yeah,
it's so hard to pass up.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to justify. The difference between fight 3 cavalry and fight 4 cavalry is so important that it's really hard. I mean, unless your list is like Foot Rohan, it's hard to imagine not taking either Theoden or one of the other kind of oddball ways you can up to fight 4, like Helmhammer, like Hellhammer Hand or something like that.
Then even if your list is an all Rohan, then you are probably taking the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legion, and then you have Theoden anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
fair
Again,
point.
like you're probably not taking foot Rohan outside of a legion, right? So
Well, Theodred's guard can be foot Rohan, Helm Hammerhand can be foot Rohan, or at
well, I
least
said
large,
outside of a
large-
legion, though, right?
Outside-
Those are both
okay,
legions.
Yeah, outside
Yeah.
of the legion. Yep,
Yeah.
fair enough. Yep, you got me there.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
guess the only way you don't need Arise Riders of Theoden is if you don't have cavalry. But again, like when are you not taking just the fact that a Rohan Royal
Well-
Guard gets +1 fight and +1 strength on the charge for free essentially is just so good.
yeah.
So I think actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there is one build other than the legions that we've just discussed where I think you don't take Theoden, and we'll discuss that when we get to it.
Sure.
Actually, I was just thinking, so with so many legendary legions and so many bonuses, technically, just a standard Rohan list led by Theoden is a legendary legion by itself, in a sense that you get the bonus, you get Theoden with his special rules, and then you pretty much take the same models with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
you're
mean, I
not
would argue
wrong.
you probably never play Rohan outside of the Legendary Legion for Theoden's Riders, right? Even with Theoden, but
Yeah, I mean, so this, I mean, and on the subject of army bonus, which I think is one of the reasons you're saying this army bonus is so good, the +1 strength on the charge. It's basically like everybody on a horse suddenly gets a lance.
mhm.
Is that this is a list where you rarely, if ever, are going to be taking these with anything but green allies, which is okay because they have a lot of green allies. Minas Tirith, Lothlorien, is the Fellowship's green allies with these guys. I can't imagine it's not, right?
Let's find out.
I think the Fellowship was yellow allies with them. No?
I think the Fellowship might be yellow with them.
That's odd.
Yeah, they're yellow
Yeah.
with them because you
Yeah,
get
that's
the
because
Fellowship
Boromir was
in
dead by
the
then.
and
Gandalf was
you
dead.
also get the Fellowship in the
Yeah, okay.
Helm's Deep Defenders Legion.
That's
That's kind
right.
of the point.
Yeah, fair enough. So what's the other one? So it's Lothlorien, Minas Tirith, and
Fiefdoms.
Fiefdoms. Yeah, okay, which is another good, another good add-on to these guys if you want some, some high fight value foot to go alongside your fairly cheap but fairly effective cavalry. Cool.
Yeah, so
Cool.
Theoden's really good.
Yeah. You should
Unless
probably
Grima
take
shows
him.
up.
Yeah, unless Grima shows up.
Yeah.
Although usually I think when Grima shows up, you can generally just have Theoden ride away from him.
Yeah.
Unless somebody's kind of invested the time to make Grima on a horse.
You can box Grima in really easily with the Riders of Rohan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if you have Grima on a horse, you could box him in even easier. But
Mhm.
Like unless
this is-
unless he's running, he's mounted. Like he's never gonna be able to keep up.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. I mean, this is if you're playing Grima against this list, this is one of the times when probably you're gonna have Grima behind your own lines and just kind of use him as like the Theoden deterrent.
Yeah.
Where he, hides behind a bunch of Urkai and says, "Don't charge here."
Mhm.
yeah.
To which the Rohan player says, "Haha, I'm not charging Theoden into Uruk-hai. Go forth, minions."
Yeah, that's right. we have people for this.
We have +1 fight, +1 strength cavalry for this.
Yeah.
Oh, we just have all those bows that are gonna aim at Grima now.
Yep.
All right. Should we go into Theodred?
Yes.
We should go into Theodred.
Let's go to Matt for Theodred because he's on my
Theodred.
screen next to me clockwise.
All right. Theodred, heir of Rohan, is 80 points. He is a hero of valor. He has the usual move 6 until you put him on his inevitable horse. He is fight 5, shoot value 4, strength 4, defense 6, 3 attacks, so he packs a punch, 2 wounds, courage 5, 3 might, 3 will, 1 fate. He has heavy armor and a sword. His heroic actions are heroic strike and heroic challenge. His options are a horse, which you always buy, a shield, which you always buy, throwing spears, which you may or may not buy, depending on whether you have kind of 5 points hanging around at the end of making up your list. He is an expert rider, of course. He is a horse lord, of course. His special rule, and this is the problem in the list, is reckless charge. Having never experienced defeat in battle until he dies horribly, Theodred's overconfidence will one day see his downfall. Theodred must charge an enemy model if he is able to do so. Additionally, on a turn in which he charges, Theodred may re-roll any failed to wounds during the fight phase. So he is...
He's reckless.
He is
He's a liability.
Yeah. Yes, he is. So Theodred always requires a group of his buddies to like ride along beside him, in front of him, to both sides, and behind him, so that they can, so you can be like, hold me back, I got to get them. And they're the guys that are kind of like reaching out to box him in. And, heaven forfend that there's a ring wraith around that compels one of these guys out of the way, and Theodred can then come out and charge recklessly into battle. But yeah, you really need to, if you were taking Theodred, and he's tempting with his fight 5/3 attacks, and plus re-rolling failed to wounds on the charge. You have to be really careful about keeping him boxed in, or else it is going to be the enemy who decides when and how he gets committed. And if the enemy decides when and how he gets committed, it rarely ends well for Theodred.
Yeah, he's kind of like a hothead. That said, he's like the same points as Huron. And for that, you get 3 attacks and possibly strength 5 on the charge too. So he is, I don't see him quite often. Do you guys see him ever?
I have seen him on occasion, rarely twice.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, you see him occasionally. You see him a little bit more now that he has a Legion, which again we're not covering, but he has to be in it, and it's a pretty good Legion. I agree with you though, Renier. Like for essentially 95 points, 3 attacks at strength 5 rerolling wounds is a pretty hard hitting little package, right? So
yeah,
and
like
strike,
defense
right?
7,
so
defense 7 too at 95
defense
points.
7, heroic strike. Like it's actually
he's
it's
a grenade
very
you
tempting.
could use. Yeah, I mean if you're going to be extremely aggressive in the game,
until you see a
got some
Crabane
downsides,
and you're like,
but shoot, he's like chasing birds, like Betty, where are you? Like, there he goes. There
why
goes
won't you
Theodred
let me
again.
photograph you?
Yeah, I mean,
he's like, I'm reckless. What can I do?
Yeah, I mean, the real danger with him is, if you haven't boxed him in correctly, or if the other guy's got some sort of magic that can get him out of his box, is when you move second, you kind of move him up, kind of like getting into approach range, but your army's not in approach range. And then somebody comes up, positions a figure like 10 inches away from him, and is either doing. I mean, the way this is really horrible is if Rohan like wins priority, and then the other guy calls a heroic move, moves somebody up within 10 inches of Theodred. As basically the bait. And then it's Theodred's turn to move. Theodred charges all the way out. The rest of the army can't keep up. And then it swaps back to the other player's turn, who then moves the rest of his army up to surround Theodred and kill it.
I mean, you can still move other models first and box Theodred in. So there is always a way of
that's why he needs his goon squad to envelop the model that would pull him out of position.
I mean, the most annoying
or like
thing,
block him off.
The most annoying thing I would find is if, let's say, you are in combat somewhere and you need to pull your forces out and to go somewhere else because there's an objective or something, and you're like, oh yeah, crap, this guy has to stay here.
Yeah, the typical like heroic strike, knock out a force, come back and like repeat. He's just gonna stay. He's gonna be like, no, I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, but even the moving the guys up, if you do it during the approach march and he's not kind of well and truly surrounded, you could end up with a situation where like you can't get him completely boxed in.
Yeah.
And then you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny. Like you'll bring him and come up against Green and you'll be like, which one do I box in? It's just the whole game. You're boxing in their guy, your guy.
Yeah. I mean, the other problem that you have with Theodred too is because you have this problem, you're always boxing him in. And then, if that means basically he can't call the heroic move. Because if he calls the heroic move when he's boxed in, he can't get into the combat. And, and then you've got your, guy that rerolls wounds on the charge that can never charge. So
In fact,
that's
if he calls a heroic move and he can't move anywhere, then models around him can only move like 6.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty useless.
Yep.
And you kind of want a lot of models in his army to have more options to kind of control charge lanes for him, which is why you're probably actually playing him in his legion where you have a lot of infantry, right? And he also gets the Arise Riders of Theoden rule for that legion, which is, as we discussed, really good. And so he's another one of those that I'm probably only playing in his legion rather than sprinkling in, but again, strength 5 rerolling wounds is pretty killy for not a lot of points. So I guess maybe if you fortify him so that, he's protecting against magically being compelled places, but then you're losing the army bonus unless you take Gandalf, but then you've already got a really bad army. So
yeah, you probably also don't want him to be the leader too, by the way, unless you're doing the Legendary Legion, right? He has to be the leader. Because he's probably going to die.
Yeah.
So
that's what we think.
All right, cool. Moving on to Eomer, Marshal of the Riddermark. Rainier, over to you.
All right, so we have Eomer, Marshal of the Riddermark. He is base points at 100, Hero of Valor, kind of like Theodred. Fight 5, Strength 4, D6, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, Courage 5, 3 Might, 3 Will, 3 Fate. So a little more expensive, but also not too expensive for a 3 attack guy, 3. He's equipped with a heavy armor and a sword. He has options for an armored horse, a shield, and throwing spears. Heroic actions are Heroic Strike and Heroic Strength. So you're not getting that Heroic March that Theoden has, but you still get Strike and Strength. He has Expert Rider and Horse Lord, like all of the Rohan heroes do. And then he has an active special rule called the Price of Grief. If Theoden or Eowyn are in the same force as Eomer, and either or both are slain for the remainder of the game, Eomer adds 1+ to all the wound rolls during the fight phase. Additionally, for the remainder of the game, Eomer must charge if able to do so. So similar to Theodred, but it's kind of a little easier because the opponent has to kill Eowyn or Theoden. So it's not as bad, but I'm kind of seeing like a nice theme of cheap points for 3 attack models that go up to strength 5. Eomer being also 3 fate. So yeah, I think he's like a really good tank that you could do a lot with. Let me see. If he has a horse and a shield, he's only at 115 points. For a 3/3/3 model, he can lead 15 troops. Like, yeah, he's pretty good. Pretty good. I typically see him. Well, if you bring like a horde, you'll have Theoden with other heroes. But if you want a nice, beefy hero in your Rohan list, you typically take Eomer.
Yeah, he's a killer. He's a killer in the list.
I don't understand why is he not fight 6. At least based on the films where Imrahil wasn't even present in his fight 6, and then Eomer killing Mumags, doing a bunch of other stuff, fight 5.
Well, he killed the Mumag by throwing a spear at the guy who was riding it. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I don't know why
he should be shoot too.
3.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
So if I remember correctly, the reason for that is, at least early on in the game, the logic was that unless you were of Numenorian heritage, you could not get to fight 6 if you were a human model. But since then, they've broken that enough times.
And then Azog appeared, right? With fight 7.
And then Bolg appeared.
And so the original logic, I could understand that the only fight 6 humans were like Aragorn and Boromir and other Numenorian descendants. Mm-hmm. But now, since that doesn't really seem to apply anymore, it does get a little silly with Rohan.
So what you're saying is the original problem was like racial superiority doctrine?
Yeah, basically, if you were a Dunedain descendant, then you got to be fight 6, and if not, you got to, be fight 5 with the rest of the peasants.
Oh, those racist jerks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I think he does okay with fight 5. I mean, one thing about him is he's okay. I mean, we can go back and forth on the the lore behind this, but he's significantly younger than kind of most of the other guys who had the fight 6, and I mean, game wise, it's kind of less of an issue because he has a lot. He and all the Rohan guys have a lot of access to basically might to call heroics with. So it's rare. I mean, Eomer has 3 might. All 3 of those might are going to be used to call heroic strikes more than likely. And he may well get a strike out of the Legion, and he may get some extra might. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure that the fight 5 really hurts him. He's still a really scary guy to kind of run into.
Typically, even with the good armies, you'll see, and besides elves, you'll see fight 4 battle lines that he just tears through. So he is also, he's hero valor, so he's not going to be your leader because you're typically going to bring Theoden. So you can just throw him in. I kind of do like the theme too of most of the heroes being fight 5 because it kind of, I don't think it would make them overpowered if he was fight 6, but they are all cheap. So like you kind of pay that. Okay, they're all pretty cheap, but they are fight 5 is going to be the cap unless you ally.
They are.
Yeah, I mean,
once you start throwing in all your Riders of Rohan and Rohan Royal Guard, then yeah, you might have cheap heroes, but then your troops are so expensive, you don't actually racking up much numbers.
Yeah. Although, and they're also consistent, right? Because I mean, Helm Hammerhand is a 5 when we get to him in one of the.
Except Helm Hammerhand is also insanely strong in everything he does.
That's true.
Especially punching.
Yeah, but it's not like Eomer's not. I mean, Eomer's got plenty to back up. So I don't know. It doesn't rankle me that he's a 5. He's still the bruiser in this list.
Yeah, I really like Eomer, and I always have. And I mean, he used to be taken a lot more in previous editions, I think, than he is now. But I also think, to the earlier point you made, Rainier, like if you are allying a small Rohan contingent into something, you might not take Theoden, you might take Eomer instead, right? Because he is a pretty budget like beater hero. And I like him quite a bit, actually. And I like that he can be kind of customizable with the, amount of options he has between horse, armored horse, throwing spears, no throwing spears. There's an argument for a lot of, for all of those, essentially. So.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. Great. So, we're moving on to Eowyn.
Moving right along.
Over to you, Kron. Robert, I mean, Kron.
Yeah, either one.
Either one.
Kron, the Warrior King. So Eowyn, Shield Maiden of Rohan. She is 40 points. She is a woman Rohan infantry hero and a minor hero. But as has been clarified, the woman keyword is just the man keyword. So it does not protect her from things that key off of man.
So they're not only racist, they're sexist.
Yep.
She doesn't get the bonuses, but okay.
She doesn't get the same pay as the other
That's right.
She has a movement of 6, a fight of 5, and a shoot of 4+, strength 3, defense 3, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, 5 courage, 2 might, 2 will, 2 fate. Comes just with a sword as her base war gear, but she has a ton of options. She can take a horse, armor, shield, or throwing spears. Her heroic actions are heroic resolve, heroic strike, and heroic strength. Like all the other heroes, she is an expert rider and a horse lord. And her fun special rule is, I shall kill you if you touch him. If Theoden is in your force and is slain, place a 25mm marker where he fell. Eowyn must move directly towards this marker during each of her move phases if she is able to. Once she's moved within 3 inches of this marker, she can't willingly move 3 inches away from it for any reason for the remainder of the game. But while within 3 inches of the marker, she becomes fearless, must reroll any failed to wound rolls. And she also receives a bonus of +1 to wound when making strikes against the model that slew Theoden. So on that rule, you're hopefully never using it because you'd much rather lose Eowyn before you lose Theoden in a game. And if you've lost Theoden and you functionally then have lost Eowyn because she's moving towards Theoden and becoming useless, then things have already gone pretty awry for you. But that said, for the very low amount of points, she's actually pretty good, right? So she is only strength 3 and defense 3, but she can get armor and a shield, so you can get her up to defense 5 at least. She does have strike and strength, and she would have the Rohan bonus of getting +1 strength on the charge. So, for a very cheap amount of points, she's actually not terrible. She is also a model you're probably not running in this guise because there is another way to run her, which I'm sure we'll cover later with the Durnhelm profile. And, in a pinch, you could also just take her bear at 40 points and throw her out in front of your army and intentionally get her killed to make Eomer get really mad and become a killing machine. I've seen that happen before where you just kind of like suicide her into the army. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that you see Eowyn on her own very often unless she's, separated from Mary because you took Durnhelm and for some reason they've separated. But for her cheap cost, she's actually pretty okay, I think.
Yeah, for her like cheap cost, she can tie up a ring wraith, rogue strike it, and stuff like that. The battle lines, again, back to that 5/5 on heroes, just knock things down, kill them. I played against someone at Articon a few years ago. He was German. He brought her, Eomer, and Imrahil, and it was just, she was the one that shocked me because I was like, oh shoot, like she's 5/5. Oh, she's tearing through my guys, like because I played low defense Corsairs and stuff. So yeah, it's a pesky model, like,
and she's actually more survivable than Theodred, right? With 2 wounds and 2 fate.
Yeah, and again, you're going to keep Theoden really safe. That's true, but I don't think people are going to like focus on her and be like, oh no, like here she comes. Let me focus my power when you do have heavy hitters like Eomer. And again, her "I shall not kill you if you touch. I shall kill you if you touch him." I don't think that really applies to the game because you're going to protect Theoden.
Yeah, I have a story about that.
Yeah.
So I was playing. So I can't remember if I was playing her or I was playing Durnhelm, but I was playing Rohan, and I had my Theoden who was killed by I think it was a troll chieftain. And Eowyn's rule activated, and she charged in, struck up, outstruck the troll chieftain, and because of that +1 to wound, killed him. So occasionally that works. It was very cinematic when it happened.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eowyn's good, and I used to use her, back before Durnhelm came around, and we'll talk about Durnhelm later. But I think now the reason you don't see her is because as good as Eowyn is, Durnhelm is better.
Yeah.
I mean, Eowyn was good. Durnhelm is outstanding.
Right.
And there's really no reason not to pay the few extra points to, have her throw on a helmet, change her name, and become a supermodel. Not in the runway sense, but in the game sense.
Hey, whatever she wants to be.
Yep, exactly.
Well, another thing, this changed a little bit, but she's a minor hero now, but back in the old edition when she could lead 12 models, she was one of those like cheap heroes if you just wanted to pad out numbers, and that was very useful.
Yeah.
She was also 30 points at that time. No, she's
so like you could just throw her in to get numbers up, and she's pretty good. So
yeah, and she didn't have that downside rule either.
Downside until you kill a troll chieftain, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right. Until a troll chieftain kills your Theoden. Yeah, that's right. Never saw that thing. Saw that.
Well, maybe that's the use, right? Like you keep Eomer and Eowyn near Theoden. He gets killed by something. They both become cruise missiles at the same time to charge in and kill it, right?
Yeah, you're like, take my leader points. I don't care. I'm gonna take your army out.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that helped out is I think we were playing whole ground, and like Theoden died in the middle of the board. So Eowyn just kind of went to the middle of the board and was like, I will die on this hill. And that was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, unfortunately, if Theoden is killed by like an arrow or something, she's kind of out of luck because
that's
she
right.
then moves near him and can't get anywhere near the model that shot him dead. So
Yeah, Theoden dies from a black dart on turn 1 of to the death, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be back here at the back of the board, guys. Have fun.
I shall kill you if you touch him and get within 3 inches of me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. On the other hand, if you just come up 6 inches away and throwing weapons at me, I won't do a damn thing to you.
Right.
Right.
All right.
So we're moving on to the reason why Durnhelm is so good, and that is Meriadoc Brandybuck, Knight of the Mark, 25 points, the only hobbit in the entire legions of Rohan, an independent hero who moves 4 with fight 3. He throws rocks on a 3+. Strength 2, defense 4, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 4, 1 might, 1 will, and 2 fate. He is dressed in an armor and a dagger. He has a heroic strike, and he can take an elven cloak, a pony, and a shield. He's also resistant to magic, and his rocks are 8 inches and strength 1. Basically, he's terrible. However, as part of Durnhelm with Eowyn, he's actually pretty decent.
Yes, he is.
So
there's no other reason to include him in any list at any time.
Well, I mean, in Rohan lists, right?
In a Rohan list, yeah. Like you have,
like, he's great in a Hobbit list, but not in a Rohan.
Well, he's a different profile. He's a beast in a Hobbit list.
Yeah,
he's a different profile on Hobbit list, though.
Also, you have this hero with heroic strike who will never ever even make it into combat because everything else in your army moves 10. By the time this guy comes anywhere near combat, the game has ended by now.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, at at the last Articon, I played a Rohan army that had Durnhelm, and Durnhelm got dismounted in the middle of my line, so I did fight him that way, right? Because he was carried into combat, basically, and then he died horribly. But he did get to combat by accident.
Yeah, I mean, although when we get to Durnhelm, we'll realize that you pay far, far less for him when he's part of Durnhelm than you do, if you buy him independently.
Because in fact, if you were to take fully dressed, fully kitted Eowyn, mounted with armor and a shield, and a throwing spear, that's like 65. If you were to then take Merry, that's 90 points in total. And Durnhelm is, I believe, less than that, 75, something like that.
Yeah, 75.
Yeah.
And then if you give Merry a shield, that's even more. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, interesting side note to the list that I don't think we need to discuss any further.
So now we're going to Erkenbrand.
So, shall we, in that case, since we'll just be talking about Durnhelm, shall we just cover Durnhelm?
Yeah, I feel like, why don't we just cover Durnhelm?
We're going to cover Durnhelm? All right, let's cover Durnhelm.
Let's do that. Who's got the book? Who's going to be first to grab the profile?
I have the book, but I'm never first. Matt always beats me.
No, we'll see. Yeah.
I've got it. Durnhelm.
All right, you win.
Okay,
so
Robert wins.
Durnhelm.
Go ahead.
So Durnhelm is essentially, now I'm holding 2 books and it's unwieldy. All right. So Durnhelm is 75 points, as we just said. And the keywords are, again, woman, Rohan, cavalry hero. Durnhelm is a minor hero. So Durnhelm essentially has a slightly different stat line because it's a combo of Eowyn and Merry together on one horse, right? So on foot, still movement 6, but always coming with a horse standard. Fight 5, shoot 4, strength 3, defense 5, 3 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 5, 2 might, 2 will, 2 fate. And then you have basically a little call out box that says that Durnhelm is in fact Eowyn and Merry mounted on a horse together. They use the rules for passengers, which are usually reserved only for narrative scenarios, but in this case are allowed for match play. And they follow all of the rules for Durnhelm until they are dismounted, in which case they revert to the 2 profiles that make up Durnhelm, and any Any wounds suffered or might will and fate points spent by Durnhelm will carry over to Eowyn's profile. For war gear, you've got armor, shield, sword, and a horse. Options, you've got throwing spears. They have resolve, strike, and strength, just like Eowyn does, because it's essentially Eowyn. Expert rider and horse lord special rules, and then the special rule Merry, which says, again, Merry follows all the rules for passengers presented in the main rules manual, with the exception that he remains the passenger of Durnhelm. He may spend his might points to declare heroic actions and affect Durnhelm's roles in any of the usual ways. Additionally, whilst Merry is a passenger, Durnhelm also gains the benefits of his resistant to magic. If Merry is slain or dismounts, reduce Durnhelm's attacks value to 2. So he's essentially upgrading Eowyn with an extra attack, resistant to magic, an extra might that can be used to call a strike that then doesn't reduce Eowyn's profile if they're dismounted. And for, as you know, as you brought up, Mick, significantly cheaper than if you were to actually pay for those profiles together from the normal list. So essentially, you're always taking Durnhelm if you want to play Eowyn, and certainly if you want to play Merry, right? I mean, I don't think that's up for debate.
Cool question. Does Durnhelm count as 2 models for your bow limit and stuff like that, or just 1?
I believe that was FAQ'd as just
actually,
1.
For bow limit, it wouldn't matter because it's a hero, but for breaking and stuff like that.
Just 1.
Just 1.
Yeah,
right.
just 1.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Merry can die, and it's like fine.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
The other neat trick that goes with Durnhelm is because Merry's mounted on, you could use Merry if you're running next to the Rohan banner that we haven't talked about yet, but you can use Merry as just like the might battery because he's only got 1 might. So, you know, he just goes ahead and calls, you know, Durnhelm's heroic moves, and then that might continually comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike the other heroes that have to like spend all their might to get to 0 before they start getting the bonus back from the flag, she can do it just from the get-go. I mean, I think I used to say, at least before Gamling was quasi-nerfed, that the order of operations for Rohan heroes was Theoden first, Gamling second, Durnhelm third. I think that's probably still true. Because she has for the amount of points that you pay, she is like almost in, because she's effectively a 3 attack hero with fight 5 and strikes, and with the ability to and 3 might, and with the ability to regenerate that might like that. There's an argument can be made that she is a better asset to your list than either Eomer or Theodred.
Yeah.
Well, and resistant to magic also doesn't.
And resistant
right?
to magic,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I think Games Workshop did a really good job about making their models really relevant and really good, because you basically just want to buy all the plastic kits.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would want to buy them just because they're so good, like, you know, model wise, right? So the fact that they have dynamite rules on top is even better. So
I have another rules question here. If Durnhelm is fighting, can both Merry and Eowyn call heroic strikes separately and try to win the fight?
I believe they can.
I would have to brush up on the rules for passengers for that. I don't know if that's under there or not.
I want to say that's in an FAQ.
Passengers can't call heroic actions, can they?
I think this one can.
So they can't in the rules, but the Merry rule of Durnhelm gives Merry the ability to do it in his profile specifically.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Because
you guys keep talking. I want to look this up. I think this was the subject of an FAQ.
I believe also for
shooting. Never get used otherwise.
I believe for shooting, you also still randomize between Eowyn and Merry on the profile, right? So like he could theoretically
shoot,
Yeah, so he could also be kind of an ablative wound for her for shooting if need be.
Yeah.
But you really don't want to lose him. So
I actually don't think that's how passengers work. I think he is untargetable for shooting is how that works.
Oh, no. When shooting at cavalry models carrying passengers, any shots that would hit the rider may hit the passenger instead.
Oh, okay.
Roll a d6. On a 1 to 3, they hit the passenger. On a 4 to 6, the rider. Strikes in close combat may be targeted upon either model at the attacker's discretion.
Sounds good. Now, is that just cavalry? So that does not affect Treebeard?
Correct.
Gotcha.
It's only cavalry. And while they are passenger, a model cannot shoot or fight in close combat, although they may be struck by enemies. But that's overridden by Durnhelm special rules.
Mhm. Well, it's because essentially Merry isn't fighting; he's just giving
Yes.
Eowyn an extra attack,
that's right,
as if he was. And it specifically says that he can declare heroic actions or might up Durnhelm, the combined profiles rolls. So
Mhm.
that's something that Durnhelm gets for being Durnhelm, not for that you wouldn't get in a normal passenger situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, since it's a passenger model, would you be able to dismount Mary, go somewhere else, come back, mount again, and become a passenger again, and become a Durnhill again?
I don't believe you can remount ever as a passenger, but you could like deposit Mary because you wanted to, get him off the board for reconnoiter or something, but throw Eowyn back in or something like that.
Well, I mean,
Right.
it says
I'm
here
looking
a
at the
model can mount up
FAQs.
as a passenger by moving into base contact with the cavalry model. So
Right.
it just depends if we're using the full passenger rules.
All right, so I'm looking at Durnhelm's
well, because however, should
FAQs, which
Durnhelm
answer
ever
all of
become?
these hang on a second.
Yeah.
Durnhelm's FAQs answer all of these questions.
Okay.
And
okay,
they also say, by the way, that I'm basically wrong in every way about Durnhelm, the things I've said so far. So the first one is, does Durnhelm count as two models for the purposes of calculating model point and breakpoint, model count and breakpoint? The answer is yes.
Yes.
So there you go. Next is, as Durnhelm is essentially Eowyn and Merry, can they both declare different heroic actions in the same phase? For example, can Durnhelm declare heroic strike and Merry also declare heroic combat? The answer is no. I think, by the way, I think that was a change to the way people had been doing it before when that FAQ came out.
Well, because that's really good,
it.
right? That was also
Yeah.
when you could then get might back on both of them in the same turn too.
And I think when the model first came out, that's the way we were doing it.
Yeah.
And the FAQ must have come out and turned that off. I haven't played Durnhelm in
But
ages,
is the FAQ saying different actions, so they could both call the same action?
Let's see. Can they both declare a different heroic action?
Oh no, they're going
A
to
single model may only declare a single heroic action
Right.
in each phase. So the answer is no.
Sure.
Then the next one is, if Merry dismounts from Durnhelm, can he remount during a later turn? The answer is no. That one I remembered correctly. And if Merry dismounts from Durnhelm, does she immediately revert to the Eowyn profile? The answer is yes. So those are the Durnhelm special rules right there.
So you only get all the fixins when they're together.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense because it says here, should Durnhelm become dismounted, revert to the profile and war gear listed above for Eowyn and use them from this point forward. So effectively, if you dismount Merry, Durnhelm no longer exists, and therefore the passenger
right.
rule doesn't exist, right? So like
Mhm.
that's just clarifying something that by logic makes sense anyway.
So I don't have my Gondor war book in here, but does Merry have the shield as part of the Durnhelm model, or do you have to buy it as part of the Durnhelm
It is
model?
so Durnhelm is Eowyn, Shield Maiden Rohan with armor and shield, with Mariotic Brandybuck, Knight of the Mark with shield mounted.
With
as a
shield. Okay,
passenger.
got
So
it.
he does.
Yep.
They both get the shield essentially. Well, they get a lot of stuff for free as we covered, right? But
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
so
of
the
free
only thing you
credits.
pay for is the throwing spears if you want them. And I think it's something that you can throw on if you want, but don't have to. For a model that effectively has 3 might, it's never a terrible use of an extra 5 points if you just have them hanging, but it's not mandatory in my opinion.
Sure. All
All
right.
right, so there we go.
Cool. All right. We're moving on.
Should I take
Coming
Erkenbrand?
back to the armies book. So we have Erkenbrand next. Well, it was me for Mary, Robert for Durnhelm. Let's go back to Rainier then. Erkenbrand,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
we have Erkenbrand, Captain of Rohan. He's 75 points, fight 5, strength 4, defense 7, 2 attack, 2 wound, 4 courage, 3-1-1. He is equipped with heavy armor, sword, shield, and the horn of the hammerhand. So the horn of the hammerhand is an active rule and adds 2+ courage, not 1. However, this horn only affects Rohan models. So you're making them courage, what is that? Courage 5, which is pretty good. He has heroic march, heroic strength, and he has an option of a horse. And then it says he also has expert rider and horse lord, and he can upgrade basically riders of Rohan to Westfold red shields for a cost of 1 point. And Westfold red shields count as being in range of a banner if Erkenbrand is within 3 inches. So you used to see this guy all the time.
Yeah.
Because his Westfold red shields would actually in the past make the riders fight for. So that was really good. Now you don't quite see him because I think all the bonuses make him semi-irrelevant. The first being the fight for, you just get fight for when you charge. The second being the banner. We're going to go over Gamling and his banner next. Gamling and his banner is way better. And the third being the courage. You don't really need a courage. When we go over the low cost, 1 more point from a regular rider, Rohan, you get a bodyguard unit that can pass courage automatically. So he's cool. I really, really like the model. I think the foot model is one of my favorite models ever sculpted. Just with the shield and the sword coming and like the robes flowing. I do also like that his armor is very unique. His helmet looks super cool. But yeah, I don't know. You guys will probably agree to some extent. He's just not. First of all, he is actually a bit expensive, 85 points. We talk about Theodred or like 15, 20 more points, Eomer. This guy doesn't really give you anything that the army doesn't already have.
Yeah, his other big
or 10
problem,
points less Durnhelm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, his other big problem is he doesn't have strike.
Yeah.
So he is essentially a 3-might captain. Well, okay, he's a fight 5 3-might captain, but the fact that he doesn't have strike is really almost crippling for him.
Mm-hmm. And he used to have strike because everybody did, right? And that's why you saw him all the time in previous editions.
Excuse me. I used to give him an axe too. There was an article once where I brought him and some Riders of Rohan, Westfold red shields allied to an army of Gondor. I converted him to have an axe, and I was told by James, no. You have to use a sword.
Oh no. So
and you actually converted him, and James
yes,
said no?
I had him with an axe, and I wanted him to be fight 5, strength like 7 on charge. And that did happen.
Denied.
That's funny. No.
Yeah. So I mean, this is becoming a bit of a theme, at least with me, and it's probably because, as we've mentioned, Rohan has like 100,000 legendary legions. But the only reason you're taking him is if you're playing Eomer's Riders, because he's your 3rd named hero and brings March, and you don't have access to Royal Guard in that legion, so which you're taking for bodyguard anyway. So the +2 courage becomes relevant on Riders. But in any other scenario, there's such a wealth of heroes in the Rohan list that I just feel like at this point, he's outclassed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to Gamling. Matt, take it away.
Gamling. Okay, so Gamling is a bargain basement, 55 points. He is move 6, fight 4, shoot 4, although that really doesn't matter. Strength 4, defense 6, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4, 3 might, 1 wound, 1 fate, heavy armor and sword. Heroic march. His heroic actions are heroic march and heroic defense, so he can be kind of hard to kill. And his options are the Royal Standard of Rohan, and he has a horse. This is a guy who, unless you're taking the Legendary Legion, in which case you won't take the horse, or at least the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion, in which case you won't take the horse, is somebody you buy all the options for. And the reason you buy him is the Royal Standard of Rohan. This precious heirloom is a banner. Additionally, any Rohan hero models that are within 3 inches of the Standard of Rohan at the start of any turn and have no might remaining automatically add 1 point of might to their store. This cannot take a hero model's might beyond the starting level. Gamling suffers no penalty for carrying the Royal Standard of Rohan. He has been nerfed in the FAQ, so that now, and somebody correct me if I get this wrong, but instead of basically every Rohan hero within 3 inches that has 0 might. You can pick one Rohan hero
That's correct.
within
Yeah.
3 inches that has 0 might. His special rules are Expert Rider, Horse Lord, and Sworn Protector Theoden. So he is going to be fearless. So this guy was the second auto include in the list because he was the might generator. I think now he may or may not be an auto include. I think now, actually, I have to say his world standard is probably appropriately pointed at 50 points to where it's still something that's attractive, especially, like I said, if you've got him standing next to. There's a whole bunch of 1 might figures in this army, particularly when we get to the stuff from Gondor War and Rohan at War. And he is very useful around those kind of 1 might heroes. They can spend their might and automatically get it back. And those guys just kind of like follow Gamling around in a little mob and do all their little 1 might tricks. And Gamling, can give at least one of them back a might each turn, and he can become an infinite might generator. So I think he's still worth it. I mean, he has a banner. That banner would ordinarily cost 25 points. That's 25 points right there. The banner is on a fairly tough hero. He's a 2-wound. He's a 2-wound defense 6 hero that has 3 might points to call heroic defenses. And conceivably, he has an infinite number of heroic defenses if he uses his banner to give his own might back. So he can be really hard to bring that banner down. So you're really not paying that many points for the might bonus, and the might bonus really does kind of drive this list. So while I think he's no longer an auto include in the lists, he's probably include in the list.
Yeah. I do like he just like outshines Erkenbrand in so many ways too. Just the cost efficiency. He does have 3 might and March too, which is amazing. And like you said, the banner, I'm thinking also in these scenarios where you need to protect or kill a banner, your army is all mounted not always, but it's going to be like mounted. And if you come up against an army that's not mounted, you basically control most of the game because you could fly wherever you want and they have to follow you with that banner. So he's really, really good. He can't kill stuff that much because he only fight 4. But again, that might battery and the banner and what he gives to other heroes, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, especially since you're running him usually in an all cavalry army, just knowing that you have infinite heroic moves alone is amazing, right? Like, what does a cavalry army want to do, especially one that gets +1 fight and strength on the charge, is constantly charge. And so, you want your other heroes to be calling strikes and combats, and this guy can call heroic moves forever, right? Which is nothing.
Yeah, and what's even more important for him also is the infinite heroic marches with him. So it allows your cavalry army to just like zip all around the board and choose exactly when it wants to charge, and you're probably not losing all that much on the you're not losing all that much when you're going in, because if you have a captain, I mean, you can either spend his 3 and when he gets down to 0 he starts getting him back, or you can just have a captain that kind of runs around next to him and calls the heroic marches and then drops him down. Then that captain's spending his 2 might, but as soon as he does the second one, it just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're moving on to Hama, Captain of Rohan, who is, as far as I can see, a strictly worse Gamling in every single possible way.
That is correct.
Because he died.
He has the same fight value, same strength, same defense, same attacks, same wounds, same courage, same heroic stat line. He does not have a march. He can have a shield. And he has the same heroic, same special rules. And he's even potentially worse than a basic captain, because a basic captain gets +1 fight value when charging near Theoden. So I'm not really sure why and where and how you would ever justify taking Hama in your list.
He's a narrative scenario piece, and that's it. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I would never ever take Hama in a list ever. So
Yeah,
Cool
no,
model though.
yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I'm not sure he's worse than Gamling. He's kind of like, I think he's pretty much the same as Gamling without the banner. So if you were
No,
going
no,
to try to
no
take
march,
him,
no
But he
march.
has no
He is
march.
worse. There's no march.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, he doesn't have a march, but he does end up with a stronger defense with a +1.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I mean, but
Well,
on the other hand,
that costs 5 points extra.
yeah, that's right. I mean, but on the other, and you could just get a captain. I mean, so yeah, I don't think I'm not sure he's that much worse than Gamling, but I can't see any circumstance where you are going to take him rather than Gamling or rather than a captain.
But even then, if you're taking Hama on a horse with a shield, at that point, I'd just take Erkenbrand, who we already determined was, not amazing, but, at least then you get the horn and the march and you get the same defense and a higher fight. So for me, he's a scenario piece.
Yeah, I mean, you got to spend some more points for Erkenbrand, but you're right. It's worth those points.
Yeah, if you were to take a captain of Rohan, the captain of Rohan is actually 10 points less to start with. Well, with heavy armor and shield and throwing spear and horse, it's pretty much the same, except the captain gets +1 fight value.
I mean,
and also,
and actually, Hama gets Sworn Protector, but
yeah, but the captain also can carry an axe, so can have strength 5 by default. And then with the bonus, actually strength 6 on charge versus Hama's strength 5. So,
and it's a James proof axe at that. He can't take it from you, Mick.
Yeah. Right. You can't peel the axe from your cold dead fingers.
Yeah.
So there's Hama.
So next.
Now we go to the next useless hero.
real quick for Laura, like Hama, the blonde model kid. That's son of Hama, right?
Yes.
So technically, what was it? They should have given him like hatred of wargs because a warg killed his dad.
True.
But anyways,
instead they gave him a really good sword.
Okay, so we have Grimbold of Grimslade. He is 60 points, hero fortitude, fight 5. Okay, so that's good. Defense 5, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4, 3 might, 1 will, 1 fate. He is equipped with armor and a 2-handed axe. His heroic actions are heroic strength, and his options are: if your army includes Grimbold, you may upgrade any number of warriors of Rohan to Helmlingas for 1 point. Helmlingas are strength 4 rather than strength 3. He also has mighty blow. So if you want to bring Merry unmounted instead, you could just upgrade him to another useless model that's more expensive, which is Grimbold.
Yeah.
So it's your choice. If you take Grimbold and Hama, like, you're really a true hero.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he only carries a 200 axe, so he always gets -1 to win.
Always gets -1.
Always. He's like a bad version of Theoden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've talked about one of the first 3 heroes that you take in the Rohan list. I think probably the last 3 heroes. Well, so there's competition for this. So there's the last 3 heroes will probably include some combination of Hama, Grimbold. I think Merry probably has a firm lock on the last slot.
No, I actually think Merry could potentially be better than these 2 guys.
Just because he's cheaper?
I mean, Grimbold has
you're wasting less points to get him?
Yeah, Grimbold has heroic strength, which you never use for any reason. Hama has defense, which you might use to block something, and then Merry has strike, which you always use. And he's like half
they all
price.
suck though.
We haven't covered it yet, but there's also the King's Huntsman. Which
I was just going to say
that's up a peg, right?
That's the 4th contender. There is the King's Huntsman.
So look, I mean, Grimbold isn't amazing, and you would probably never take him in just like a Rohan list. But Helminga's having strength 4 infantry is not bad. And again, as the theme comes, if you're taking him, you're probably taking him in Theodred's Legion, right? Where he's one of the heroes that can then make your upgraded Rohan infantry better by being strength 4. Like, there's a role for him there as a fairly cheap 3 might, captain that upgrades your battle line. But in a standard,
but isn't going
Rohan
to kill
list,
anyone himself because he gets a -1 in any.
no,
in the
he
duel.
stands behind the line and calls heroic moves or something, right? Like he's not great, but at least the Helminga's upgrade is not 100% useless 100% of the time. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't think I've ever.
It's so
taken
funny.
Helminga's
We're all
upgrade.
like he's horrible, but now we're debating on how horrible he is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Also-
having Rohan infantry that are strength 5 with their axes is not terrible, right?
That's true. That's true.
Especially in an army where they
but
get spear support.
They cost like
Yeah.
eight points then.
Yeah, they get expensive. They do,
Yeah.
and they're still defense 5.
Yeah, and they're fight 3, defense 5, and they cost 8 points at that point.
But they're still
Well,
strength 5.
All
You
right,
can
so
unshield them, 7 points for strength 5.
Yeah,
Defense
compare,
5.
compare that to a Morannon.
Yeah.
Let me look up the Morannon stats here.
Well, it's the same thing as the Morannon essentially,
Yeah,
except
but I
defense
mean-
6.
Well, that's what I'm checking to see whether the Morannon is defense 6 at the same points or not. That's what I can't remember. Where's Evan when you need him? Let's see
Yeah,
here.
Morannon is 8 points at defense 6,
8 points at defense 6. All right, yeah, no. You
and
don't
so
bother.
these guys are 8 points at defense 5.
Yeah.
But
I actually,
they
I'm
have
like,
strength
I'm liking
5.
this.
Well,
I'm liking
Well,
this though, because you could.
actually,
It says
yeah, strength
you
4
could
the same way.
include these Helmingas across the army. You don't just have to be in your warband.
Correct.
So you could sprinkle in 7-point warriors that can go up to strength 5, selective. That's something to consider. Like that's what I do, and like, yeah, they might be defense 4, but like if you have a ton of them, and if you have a battle line with throwing spears and stuff like that, like.
Well, and
I'm
especially
considering
in
it
the
and
Legion,
setting
right?
it aside.
Mhm. Oh, I
mean-
can't believe we're actually discussing all of this.
I think Grimbold is useless. I think Helmingas, however, can be useful.
Mm.
Yeah,
Are you really gonna
you would
spend
do it
6
if you wanted to play bottom table.
All right. So are you really though going to spend 60 points on a figure that you can't commit to combat, or a hero that you can't commit to combat, in order to get the ability to get the equivalent of Morannon orcs that are 1 defense weaker?
For sure
Five-
not. For sure
defense
not.
5
But I
more
think
than
we're just
ours.
finding
No.
some chocolate chips in this mud pie.
Well, I mean,
So-
we're just arguing
Still
whether
mud
or
pie.
not Mary the King's Huntsman or Hama are worse, and I'm
So-
just saying he's
Yeah.
He's 4th from the bottom, not
gotcha.
3rd from
Next
the bottom.
next episode is going to be
All
like
right.
who is the worst, and we just
We're not-
debated it.
We're not debating whether he's good. We're debating whether he has any redeeming features to go with his crappiness.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct.
Exactly.
All right.
And I think he does, even though they are slim. So
So just to finish the trifecta or the quartet,
mhm,
before we do Errol the Young, let's just talk about the King's Huntsman.
mhm.
50 points. Fight 3, shoot value 3. Strength 4, defense 5, 1 attack, 2 wounds, courage 4, 2 might, 1 will, 1 fate. Now, if you just hold on there, 1 attack for 50 points for a hero. He has armor, sword, and longbow. He has the heroic accuracy special rule, and King's Huntsman only fail in the way rolls on the roll of a 1. Additionally, each time this model slays an enemy hero or a monster model, restore the King's Huntsman might to its starting level. So back to 2. So he
Oh,
he will never really miss in the ways, which means he will usually hit the target he's trying to hit. And then you guys spend all of your might. You might actually sometimes do some damage to a hero or a monster. Probably not kill a hero or a monster unless it's something like one of Bart's children or something like that. At which point he becomes amazing at killing Bart's children. So he
Mhm.
could be the perfect way of defeating Lake Town. So he's potentially like 3rd from the bottom.
so
Mhm.
Nick, while you were in the desert,
Mhm.
doing secret and nefarious things for unnamed governments, we actually discussed him in a lot of detail under, I think, underused models that are broken and in need of fixing. And I think you've kind of encapsulated well kind of what his problems are. I mean, he used to have a use back in the day when he was kind of like a poor man's Legolas, because you could actually shoot into combat with him, and you can't shoot into combat with him anymore. And he's just his only getting one shot a turn is you're never going to get your benefit.
What if you bring a couple of him?
Yeah, I was going to say, what if you had like 2 or 3 or 4 of them then?
Yeah, that's right.
I've got you.
You have 200 points of this guy, because he's not worth his points. But if we get 4 of them,
and if we go back before the FAQ and Gamling's banner works the way it used to work,
now,
I'm gonna put 8. Yeah, I like the idea. I think if we're competing for like the lowest, I think he's better than Hama and better than Grimbold, because he has potential. He could potentially be a mini Legolas, or 2 of them have like that effect of just scaring your opponents, knocking off things off their horses and things like that. So is he really good? No. Would you take him? Most people wouldn't, but I would actually consider taking him over Hama and Grimbold.
The one redeeming feature he has, by the way, and this is in the FAQ, is if he shoots a mounted model, he can choose whether to hit the horse or the guy. As long as he rolls a 2+, he gets to shoot what he's shooting at. So he can shoot out horses. So I mean, I think I agree with you on that. He is a useful guy to shoot out horses. I can't imagine taking more than 1 of him, because the amount of points that you're going to suck away from your combat potential with Rohan. I mean, the advantage to Hama and less so Grimbold, but the advantage to Hama is if you need to, you could just throw him into ordinary guys and he will kill stuff. And he's still a defense 7 guy with 2 attacks and 3 might, and he can do some damage. Whereas this King's Huntsman is, as soon as the enemy gets to him, he's just going to get trampled into the ground.
Yeah, he's also a minor hero, so he only brings 6 models, and the other guys bring 12.
And even with his dehorsing ability, like, I'm not sure that just 7 Rohan warriors with bow and axe aren't better for that anyway, right? Like, so
but actually, with his dehorse
I guess he has
ability,
might, but
with his dehorse ability, wouldn't he be the perfect mirror match trump card? By dehorsing opponents, Theodens and Eomers and Theodreds and whatever else?
Well, no, because of Horse Lord.
Right. I tried.
Well, back to it. If your meta brings Bard, just have him murder the children.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I guess he's the only one in the list, I believe, that brings heroic accuracy. So maybe if you're doing some like Outrider gun line, there's something to be done there, right? But
100% bow limit to the warriors too, like that's potential.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to hit rewind, if folks are really interested in using the King's Huntsman list, go back and listen to that episode. I think it only came out like a couple of weeks ago, where I actually came up with a list that had, I think it was the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legion, and in it had Gamling to give the extra point of might. And it had, I think it's Aldor, the shaky hand guy who gets the free point of might, and it had Legolas in it, and it had one of these guys. And, basically you kind of put all these 3s together, you stand near Gamling, and, whoever needs the 1 point of might or whatever to kill the horse or whatever can get it back from Gamling. And you basically have, between Legolas and this guy and Aldor, you're going to do some damage on shooting on the way in with these guys. You're going to get guys off of horses. I think that's probably the best use for him.
Yeah, don't disagree.
It's probably a bit useless if your opponent has no horses.
It is going to be almost entirely useless if your opponent has no horses, but the odds are he'll have horses.
Yeah.
I guess if he has no horses, you just shoot like that one banner and blow on your might to kill it and hope for the best, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because his in the ways will probably pass. So
yeah. Cool. Well, there is a Captain of Rohan, which is pretty
Well,
basic.
hang on.
But
We skipped
I was
somebody.
about to say we still have Earl the Young, and I thought, Matt, go ahead.
All right. So we had talked earlier. I had foreshadowed that there would be a type of list here where Theoden is not an auto include. And Earl the Young is the guy. If Earl the Young is in your list, the Young is in your list. Theoden is most definitely not an auto include. Earl the Young is 115 points. He's a hero of valor. He's move 6 until he gets inevitably on his horse. He's fight 5, as with all Rohan heroes. Shoot value 4+, strength 4, defense 7, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 5, 3 might with an asterisk, 2 will, 2 fate. And he comes with some caveats. The first caveat is if your force contains Earl the Young and any other named hero models from a Rohan army, then the Rohan army will automatically lose its army bonus. So he's meant to be taken on his own because Earl the Young is from a different time from all of the other heroes, named heroes that are in this list. The second caveat is that if your army contains Earl, then every alliance will be impossible allies. One exception would be Minas Tirith, so long as the Minas Tirith force also includes no named hero models. His war gear is heavy armor, sword, shield, throwing spears, and Felaroth. Felaroth is Earl's noble steed that is an armored horse with a move of 12 inches. Earl's heroic actions are resolve, strike, strength, and defense, so pretty much all the ones that you want there. He is an expert rider. He is a horse lord. And his special rule is legendary hero. Earl is a mighty hero, but not actually a mighty hero. Mighty hero in the history of Rohan, the man who founded the Great Realm. The first time each turn, Earl the Young spends a single point of might, roll a d6, and a 4+, the point of might is free, does not reduce Earl's store of might. So by the way, this is not just for spending heroic actions. He can spend, as long as he's just, the first point of might he spends, even if it's just to increase a roll, he can spend it for free on a 4+. So he's got 3 might, but he's really got, kind of 4.5 might, which is a pretty decent rule to have. So Earl the Young, like Theoden, comes with a special rule that is not actually in his profile, and that is with the Son of Earl profile. Earl has a bunch of sons. Those sons get lots of attacks when they're with him. We'll talk about Sons of Earl sometime later, but basically it's a fight 4 cavalry unit with 1 attack, but whilst within 6 inches of Earl the Young, the Sons of Earl get a bonus +1 to their attack value. So back in the day, Sons of Earl used to be 2 attack cavalry, and they were the guys you wanted to be your punch in the Rohan list. Now they are kind of specialists that go with Earl the Young. So there is a different paradigm you can run if you have Earl the Young. In Rohan, you can run Earl and then, maybe half a dozen Sons of Earl riding with him, along with, a bunch of captains and some guys to fill out the rest of the army. And it's a fun little list to run. I've run it a couple times. I've had it run against me a couple times. It's not something you want to take at 800 points because, basically it all kind of revolves around Earl the Young. And when you get to the higher points levels, if you want that type of Rohan army, you're going to take Helm Hammerhand. But it's small points levels at like the 400, 450 point level. It's actually a pretty decent army to run because Earl, with like 4 to 6 of his sons around him, can they pack a wallop when they charge in at those low points levels. So that's Earl. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that.
No, that's cool.
I think he's actually like just profile. He's pretty cool and pretty good, but the restrictions are pretty severe, which is why you don't see him. And he's also not a hero of legend, though he is a legendary hero, which I find kind of funny because it's not like you can take him with Theoden or something anyway. So wouldn't have he been the king of Rohan of his time, and therefore shouldn't he be a legend? But I mean, it's a minor quibble.
Well, yes.
I mean, he is a legendary
hero. At the time, they weren't allowed to bring that many warriors with them when they were legendary.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
maybe at the time, like the population of Rohan just wasn't that big, so you weren't able to bring that many.
Or maybe he didn't become legendary until after he became, King of Rohan, because technically Rohan didn't exist until he came and saved Gondor, right? And basically got a land grant from them. So
then he was called Earl the Old.
Maybe to the contemporaries, he wasn't legendary at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was just some schmuck that showed up asking for directions, right?
Well, I mean, he has a profile that is full of contradictions because, as you point out, he's not a hero of legend, but yet he is a legendary hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he is also. It says he is a mighty hero, but he's not a mighty hero.
No.
But all the quibbles aside, like his profile just on its own is pretty good, right? Like, I mean, for its points, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is, as you say, he's on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there are some fun lists that you can do with this, where you have Earl the Young and some sons of Earl, and then and then either a captain or a king of men on like a king of men on a horse with lance. I think they can get lances.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, and then you throw in like an Avenger bolt thrower or something like that into the mix with this list, and it's a fun little list at around the 500 point level that has some like different scary components that can do interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you could get a king of men, a captain of Minas Tirith, and a decent like shield wall, and then Eorl with some sons of Eorl, and because kings of men are now valor, he doesn't have to be the leader, so you can throw him in and mess it up a little bit. Sounds really fun, actually. Like a little field of Celebrant list.
I've seen someone from my group play it, and it actually surprises people how well it does. It's not like I would say top table competitive, but it is for lower points. You do get that punch. Holy smokes, this king is fight 5 and he has a lance and he's like tearing through me. Oh my goodness, the shield wall, I cannot break it. And you have Sons of Earl on the side and a Avenger bolt thrower sometimes just knocking stuff out. So it is a nice little surprise. I don't know, it just reminds me of like a Roman shield wall with like some Visigoth allies or something, even though the Visigoths were raiding them. But you know what I mean? Like it's reminiscent of that era.
And I actually think that's exactly kind of what Tolkien based it on too, right? Like it totally fits that mold.
Well,
yeah, because
Tolkien never talked about the Sons of Earl.
Well, not the Sons of Errol.
The lure with like the
that's
Visigoths,
not true. He did talk about the Sons of Errol, but they were like 2 of them, and they were actually the sons of Errol the Young, right?
Right. He didn't talk about Errol like spamming his sons.
Yeah.
He's not Genghis Khan.
You dog, Eorl, spamming sons.
That's right.
All right, so what we're gonna do the last one, Captain Rohan.
Yep.
So and then there's also 2 more left from the Gondor at War. So is it worth just plowing through them, or?
Nah, let's do that when we do the legendary legions.
Yeah. Well, the Captain of Rohan is a captain. He's a strictly better Hama, as we discussed before. Although he has one might point less. He is Fight 4, Strength 4, Defense 5, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, Courage 4. He can have an axe alongside his armor. He marches. He has all the standard captain equipment like horse, bow, armor, heavy armor, shield, throwing spears. And he receives the same charge bonus of +1 to fight value when he charges if Theoden is nearby. So he will very often be Fight 5, which makes him a pretty decent choice. Plus, the fact that he has March means you don't have to be using Theoden's March. So he's probably something like 3rd or 4th choice in your standard Rohan list. But there isn't really much else to say about it, to be honest.
I mean, you can get for free an axe and you can go up to, strength?
Yeah,
6.
he'd be strength 5 plus strength 6 on charge with the bonus. So he's pretty decent.
Yeah, I think the Captain of Rohan is probably one of the best captains in the game. Because of all those things that kind of stack on there. where you have the potential to make him, if you get all the bonuses working for you, he is fight 5, strength 6,
Strength 6, yeah.
defense 7,
Mhm.
2 attacks up to 3 on the charge, and then the rest of it is hero stats. But that whole fight 5, strength 6, defense 7, that's a pretty damn effective profile for what's going to be a probably 65-point model or something like that.
So he used to be part of the Rohan all hero list that was quite strong back in the day before Gamling got nerfed.
Right.
People would run several of these captains alongside Gamling, but since Gamling only now gives might to a single character per turn, that's no longer possible.
Mhm.
Yep. Although still, I don't know, we'll talk about this when we get to the Legendary Legions, but one thing I'm actually fuzzy on is, we'll talk about it when we get to the Legendary Legions.
Mhm.
All right. So with that in mind, check out the next episode, guys, because we're going to be talking about Legendary Legions. And Matt has something to say.
That's right.
Because he never has something to say, but he has something to say next time.
It's not that I have something. I have a question to pose. I actually don't know the answer to it, so I'll pose it for the crowd. So. All right. Good to have you back,
to our viewers, like maybe send a Rohan list. We haven't reviewed a Rohan list in a long time.
Yeah.
And I want to see these like weird like allied lists and stuff like that with the Rohan. You can do so many different combos.
Yeah, like you can bring Grimbold and King's Huntsman and Hama together.
Hama.
I actually
bring 2 Hamas.
I will put a challenge out there. I want to see somebody's early young list. I would love to review an early young list.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And just to spite all of you, I'm going to write a list that is made up entirely of Helmingus.
Okay.
I'll come to your defense, Rob.
Do it.
Helmingus and King's Huntsman.
Well, that's a bridge too far there, bro. I want to lose, not super lose.
All right, cool. Well,
guys,
good to see everybody.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Until the next episode.